My name is Lee Chandler. I'm a mediator, and I'm here to help you have a more peaceful life. When I say negotiation, do you think of buying a used car or serious people around a table making a big deal, or do you think of haggling at a market on vacation? Those are all negotiations, but so is any conversation where you're trying to get someone else to do what you want or trying to get them to stop doing something you don't want them to do. Even when you technically have the power, like if you're telling your child what to do, you're still negotiating if your goal is to make them act differently. And you can only have real power in a negotiation once you no longer need the result you're asking for. And that's something that you have more control over than you think. Please like and subscribe. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer in a future video, leave a comment below. You can also send questions to advice@leechandler.com if you'd like me to answer them in my Ask a Mediator advice column. When you're negotiating, and remember, we define negotiation as any conversation where you're trying to get someone to do something or stop doing something or do something differently, there's a lot of potential for conflict because most of us don't like being told what to do, and most of us don't like it when we ask someone to cooperate and they refuse to. A lot of everyday arguments are really just negotiations that got out of hand. And a mistake I see people making all the time is to go into the conversation needing the other person to do something or to stop doing something or to change in some way in order for the problem to be solved. If the only way to solve the problem is for the other person to do something, you've given them all the power, and that's not a good position to be in a negotiation. So I always ask people to explore other ways to make the situation better, preferably things they can do all by themselves, whether or not the other person cooperates, before we get into a conversation. I ask them to think about all the resources that they have to solve the problem, even the things that will only slightly improve the situation. I ask them to find out exactly what their alternatives are if the other person won't cooperate, and to explore those alternatives in detail. Knowing, for example, that you can file a lawsuit is a lot different from consulting with a few lawyers and getting an idea of the cost and the likelihood of success if you do file a lawsuit. I often ask people what they will do if they can't get any help from the other person at all, because creative ideas often come only after you've closed the door to the option that looks most appealing to you. This works for a few reasons. If you go through this exercise, you end up with a lot more puzzle pieces to play with, and you can come up with solutions that go beyond I win or they win. It makes you a more relaxed and calm negotiator because you feel prepared. It gives you confidence because you know exactly how strong your position is, and you have the power to improve your situation with or without their help. Let's look at a silly example. You want your coworker to stop snapping her gum all day in the cubicle next door. Here are some things you might look into before that conversation. You'd look at the cost, effectiveness, and practicality of personal noise-blocking devices like headphones and earplugs. You'd look at things that you can do to make a cubicle more soundproof. You'd see whether you could use quiet music or some other sound in your space to drown out some of her noise. You'd see whether you could move to a different workspace. You might even look at ways to emotionally cope with irritations at work. Maybe a meditation class would help you relax more in spite of the noise. You could even look at formal complaint procedures in your workplace if you think that you might want to escalate things. You can probably think of a few more, but this list would put you in a good position to negotiate with the gum snapper. Because your research gave you at least one or two things you can do to improve your situation, she doesn't have all the power anymore. You're much more likely to make a convincing but compassionate argument. And if she refuses to cooperate or agrees but cooperates imperfectly or only agrees to part of what you want, you have your other solutions as a backup plan. This works in every negotiation. Do your research so you're prepared to make your own positive changes if the other person doesn't agree, and you will put yourself in a much more powerful position. It even works when you're negotiating for that used car. If you have a good backup plan, you're much less likely to make a bad deal.